the added stress if you are in a second marriage of if there's already children and trying to blend the family and dealing with ex-spouses now and people's opinions on top of the already difficult task of conceiving after a certain age. What are some ways, aside from the manifestation and the journaling, which I both very much believe in, what are some ways um, you help your clients or your customers kind of quiet out the noise and the stress to really focus on what matters here, the end game?
I think part of it for us is creating community. And we've been really working at WeNatal in creating a community and a village because it could be such an isolating time in people's lives.
You know what's ironic? We grow up, we learn where babies come from, and we're told exactly what to do to avoid getting pregnant. And then it comes time to get pregnant, and there's so much we don't know. If you are trying to conceive or you're thinking about having a baby and you're past a certain age that most people would say is typical for conception, maybe it's a second marriage, I am so excited for you to be a part of this conversation today. You're going to meet two phenomenal women, Vida and Ronit, and together they founded a company called WeNatal, which is a supplement and prenatal company. Lots of different ways to help you reach your peak wellness when it comes to trying to conceive, and not just for women. They founded a men's prenatal that incorporates all of the things that will help men replenish their sperm, increase their sperm quality as they're trying to conceive with their partners. And we've had a really interesting conversation about the science behind all of this. Some of it I had never even heard of. So I'm really glad you're here. I'm really glad you're going to be a part of this. If you are struggling at this point in your life, I think this conversation is going to bring you a lot of clarity. So let's meet Vida and Ronit. I'm so excited you guys are here with me, and now everyone gets to meet you.
We're so happy to be here, Michelle. Thank you.
For me, there's nothing, I mean, listen, I am a female-owned brand, right? And like I grew in the space that I'm in by having other, female entrepreneurs really like help and support me. And so when I met you guys back in April at the event in LA, I was like, "Oh, God, this is great. Not only are you two women I can really expect respect for the work that you're doing, but what you're doing actually really speaks to the followers, my followers in the phase of life that they're in when they are now maybe getting remarried or starting over again. And they're thinking, I'd love to have a family with this new person who I wish, I met sooner in life, but now maybe I'm approaching 40 or I'm over 40. Can I even still have kids?"
Yeah. Well, the answer to that is yes, and we're so excited to join you and talk about um all of the options and what people could do if they are in that phase of life, because our brand was born from a place of loss, and we can share a little bit more
Yeah,
about
I would
that.
love to hear that because I think it's really important. I think pregnancy loss is far more common than it isn't. Like I would say the majority of my friends either experienced pregnancy loss or had to go through IVF in order to conceive. So it has to be talked about. And I'd love to hear your stories.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more. So it goes back to our corporate careers actually. Ronit and I met at Nike where, you know, we worked on some of the biggest marketing events, the biggest athletes. We followed like what people and consumers and the best athletes in the world need to do to prepare for the best outcomes, for the best sport. We ran marathons, and you don't just pick up and run a marathon, right? There's so much that goes into it, from a coach to the training shoes, to the meal plan, to the long runs, and et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? And so, when I was trying to conceive, me and my husband just figured we're healthy enough, and there was no prep. It was literally just like, oh, okay, we were married for a couple of years. Let's dive in. And so I got pregnant not long after Ronit did, and I envisioned like what all friends dream, like maternity leaves together and all the things. And she was getting ready to deliver, and actually she did deliver. And I went into that routine 3-month checkup. It was slightly after the first trimester. We had told everyone, and waiting for that moment, that the heartbeat that like everybody waits for. And instead, in my case, it was just complete silence. And I saw my doctor's face drop, and he just looked at me and he said, "I'm so sorry. There's no heartbeat." And it was, I mean, there's no words. It was the most devastating, earth-shattering moment in my life where my world came crashing down. I was bawling. Of course, I went into months of like the blame game that so many women do. Was it what I ate, the stress at work, the too much coffee, the workout? What, like, I could have picked any of those things and just said it was one of them. But the reality is we got no answers. My doctor was just like, you're lucky, kind of like dismissive, keep it moving. And I didn't know better. But luckily for me, my best friend was Ronit, and she like picked me up. And I was going through this like so happy for her moment. She just had a baby, and like so sad that like my dream didn't live out the way it was supposed to, or in my heart, the way it was supposed to. And she, thank goodness, was working alongside Dr. Mark Hyman, one of the best functional medicine practitioners. And she started
I love him.
He's the best. And thank God she left Nike to go work in this space, because she started digging in with me. She's like, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you checked your thyroid? Have you, and because all my labs were quote unquote normal, they're fine. He couldn't point it to anything. But after she encouraged me, I went deep with an endocrinologist. I found out I had Hashimoto's. I fixed it. I went on to have a healthy baby girl about 1.5 years after she had her daughter. That's a bit how the story began. And then what progressed is in early 2020, we both had a daughter. I don't think either of us knew the other one was trying to conceive. And the same thing happened. That earth-shattering moment, I went in for a routine checkup, and there was no heartbeat. And I was just like, again, conditioned to think this is normal. It was my second miscarriage. It just happens. You're old. The blame game of like, why in this society is just like, oh, you're over 35. It is what it is. You're lucky you got pregnant. Keep trying, was kind of the message I got yet again. The thing that turned us on this one was that a week later, Ronit called me, and she had a miscarriage too.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you guys.
And for me, it was the biggest shock of my life, because here I am working with Dr. Hyman, doing all the wellness things. Like I thought I had it right. Like I was taking good quality prenatals, or at least what I thought were good quality prenatals. I had already like detoxed my whole house from like plastics, and I was doing all the right things, or at least I thought I did. But what was the biggest blessing for me is because I was working in functional medicine for 4 years at that point, I didn't take my doctor's answer. I continued to kind of like push and try to figure out and put my researcher hat on, even though my doctor said it's because of your age. At that point, I was 41 when I got pregnant.
Okay.
And so the doctor said, when you're over 40, it's just more common to have miscarriages. And yeah, just because it's common doesn't necessarily mean that it's normal, and
that it has to happen, right?
and that it has to happen. And so I really started to dig in. And luckily for me, I had a huge network of friends that were functional dietitians, nutritionists, doctors, experts in the fertility space, and started to dive into the research. And I remember the moment where I came across this piece of information, and I called Vita, and I couldn't believe that it was the piece of information that was like completely hidden from what anybody talked to us about. And it was that men are 50% of pregnancy health, and that men who improve their sperm quality have way higher outcomes when it comes to pregnancy and live births, and that men actually have this superpower where they're constantly regenerating sperm. So they can actually completely transform their sperm in 3 months. And so I called Vita and I said, Vita, like, why isn't anybody talking about this? We need to talk about this. Let's create a men's prenatal, because research shows that men who take nutrients, super specific nutrients like CoQ10, NAC, vitamin C, vitamin E have a higher likelihood to get their partner pregnant. And when I say higher likelihood, I mean a 4x. So
Wow.
quadrupling the chances of pregnancy and 5xing the chances of a live birth. So that was a no-brainer for us. And we started to roll up our sleeves and dive into creating a formula. We hired an expert functional medicine doctor her focus was fertility, and started to work on the formulation. But then in our case, so first we put our husbands on like a DIY kind of version of what ended up becoming WeNatal for him. And they were taking all of these nutrients, and we educated them on the importance on like why they should do this. And of course, them going through the miscarriage themselves, a lot of people don't think about like how sad and traumatic it is also for
the
like
man.
the
Yeah.
man. So they were willing to do anything basically we told them to do. So they were taking like
Good
12
men.
pills a day, and they stopped, whatever bad habits they were doing, whether it's like smoking or drinking, because all of those things are inputting toxins into the body. And then in our case, we were taking a prenatal, but we were adding, because we also learned that there are certain nutrients that you can add to your prenatal regimen that can help improve egg quality. And so we were adding a ton of things to our prenatal. Our prenatal had 7 pills, and then we were adding about 5 more pills to that situation. And I was like, okay, no, like I was working in the wellness space. I had no problem pill popping. Like I had no problem at all. But Vita was a wuss.
I was nursing like 1 to 2 capsules per meal. It was just not sustainable for me. There's no way I could take.
I'll say to your point, like, because I take a ton of stuff too. Just, I also see functional medicine doctor, and I monitor my blood every 6 months. And that means tweaking my supplement routine. And there are so many. I didn't realize how much there were until I just went on vacation. And I was like lugging like, one pill case is not going to do it these days. You know
No,
what I
those
mean?
tiny pill cases, no way.
A
No.
drug addict. But yes, I get it. It's a lot. So, okay.
But we thought, okay, it was that to me, like, and both of us coming from Nike, knowing like, okay, we want to create like a better consumer experience. And like when somebody is pregnant, you can't expect them to take 12 pills a day.
No.
And so we realized like we wanted to reinvent the women's prenatal as well, because the truth of it is the prenatals on the market, the better ones, had a lot of capsules, but you still had to add stuff to it. So could we create a prenatal that had the optimal dosages, the right nutrition profile, and still have it be like a low pill count? And that's what we did with WeNatal for her. And that's kind of how we got into WeNatal, from the space of like a men's prenatal. And that's our story. And to me, just going back to my personal story, 3 months after my miscarriage, I was on my regimen. I put my husband on his regimen, and I got pregnant with Emma, who's 4.5 today. I gave birth to her 4 days after my 42nd birthday.
Whoa.
And so one of our biggest messages at WeNatal is to share with our community that it's not too late. There's so much you could do. And yes, like IVF is 100%, or IUI, an amazing solution, but there's so much that you could do before you go down that route to optimize your fertility.
Absolutely. And I think, what I've found with my clients who are now in the space of remarriage and wanting to try again is there is this mindset on behalf of the man. Like if there is difficulty conceiving, the man's mindset is, well, I did it 10 years ago. I didn't have a problem, and it's always very much becomes the woman's fault. And it's
Yeah.
emotionally and physically both just such a horrible feeling to, be with somebody who doesn't want to assume responsibility for the fact, like you guys said, they are 50% of the equation. I remember when I was, I didn't have a hard time conceiving, and I feel very fortunate for that. But I remember leading up to it, almost anticipating that I would when I had my daughter 10 years ago, and me telling my husband, you can't smoke, you can't do this, you can't, and he's like, I'll be fine. It's you, it's your, it's always just this mindset of like, it's the woman's responsibility. And I just wonder, like, do you encounter in your line of work men who are like, oh, I don't need that, I'm fine. Like, how do you help women force their husbands to take this?
Well, first of all, any reel we ever put on Instagram that speaks to male fertility has like the most amount of shares ever, because we know it's the women sharing it with their partner. And we'll have people that reach out to us and they'll say like, my husband's having a hard time. He doesn't want to stop smoking. Can you send me research? And we'll send them research. And, at the end of the day, with WeNatal, in the beginning, we weren't sure. Are men going to like buy the supplement? Are we just going to order all this inventory and no one's going to buy it? Like, we had no idea. And it started slow, but I would say now about 20% of our orders are men only.
Wow.
And then we have about 50% that are together, so the together kit. And so that's 70% of our sales are essentially like also men's prenatals. And, when we first launched, we didn't have the men like super vocal or front and center. But like, for instance, we give all of our customers a free nutrition consult. And I remember about a year after we launched, our head nutritionist, Lisa, said, oh my God, we had a husband join the nutrition consult. And then a few months later, we had a man join alone. And I think like the men are really starting to learn and step up to the occasion. And, it just takes like the education.
Yeah. And I'd say when we started this brand, I think it was very much, Michelle, that this like, it is all on the woman. That's really the impetus of WeNatal, was like, actually the gender paradigms need to shift and there needs to be rich education. There's so much misinformation in this black box of fertility that is being spewed. And so our first mission was really like, how do we shift the gender paradigms? How do we educate? How do we empower both partners? Because fertility is a team sport. It's not solo. And really, like, for me, my mission in this was like for no woman to feel the way I felt, which was completely responsible despite all of my husband's actions, which were not as healthy as mine. Let's just, let's leave it there. And so the fact that it didn't even dawn on me that it could be him, but I'd say what's helping the shift is that there's way more attention around men's fertility. There's way more discussion about this global fertility crisis that we're living in. And people are starting to see the decline in sperm, the decline in testosterone from what like our generation has versus their grandparents. Men today have 50% less sperm than their grandparents' generation. So the narrative is starting to shift.
Where's all the sperm going? What is causing this?
Spermageddon.
Spermageddon. No, I will say, like, when we started WeNatal, like, no one was talking about sperm, and now I feel like it's like the biggest trend. Like, everybody's talking about sperm because and thank God that they are, because we are seeing this massive decline in sperm counts. And what's going on is like, if you think about the last 50 years, like, what has changed in the last 50 years? Well, what has not changed in the last 50 years? It's like the food that we're eating. It's the toxins in the environment. It's the, I'll say, throw out specifically to men, hormone replacement therapy for men, testosterone, and taking testosterone actually completely reduces sperm counts to zero. And so that's one that men should be aware of. People are moving less. People are spending time indoors, and our food is just not as nutrient as it used to. Mm-hmm. And so that's why for Vita and I, we talk a lot about the power of these nutrients, because you just can't get it all from food.
Right.
And then going back to the man who had the child easily 10 years ago, sperm quality, there is this myth around men and sperm because you have celebrities in their 80s having children, and so we have this idea of like men don't have a biological clock. but they do have a biological clock because after the age of 35, their sperm quality declines. And research shows that men who have kids later in life, they actually do have more genetic abnormalities and things like that. And then the other thing that happens is our eggs have this incredible ability to, and I'm not going to go into like the science of it, I'm going to say it in like the most basic terms, to kind of overcompensate for DNA damage in sperm when the eggs are young and when the eggs have good mitochondria. But as you age, the eggs have less of that ability, so they can't overcompensate for the issues in sperm. That's why a lot of couples will have secondary infertility.
What a metaphor for relationships in general. When I'm young, I'm going to do everything I can to make this relationship work and make you shine, baby. After 40, you're on your own.
Yeah. It's in our biology. It's in our biology.
Literally. This was the best piece of science I've heard in a long time. That's really amazing. I did not know that. I'm so glad you shared that. You know, all of what we're talking about, just I'm thinking to myself, we grow up, we learn where babies come from, and we learn how to prevent that from happening until it's absolutely time. But we don't learn any of these things. We don't learn about sperm health. We don't learn about, you know, how many eggs your body's producing at 30 versus 40. Like we really are at a disservice. And yet, you know, I think what, for my friends who had trouble conceiving, it was like, you know, this person who's basically a child and unwed can conceive so naturally. And I'm here ready to have a baby and I want to have it. And I'm trying so hard. Can you speak a little bit to the research, if there is research behind emotional stress affecting, you know, because they say like when you're trying so hard to make it happen, it doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. Is there science behind that?
Yes, and growing science. And so funny you mentioned that. When we incepted WeNatal, we knew the growing stress around fertility was only making the matter worse, and which is why we came out with a manifestation journal as part of our offering. So any couple that subscribes together, the journal is our gift, and it has 3 components. It has questions to discuss, whether you're preconception, pregnant, but questions to really go deeper with your partner or your village if you're doing this alone. There's, gratitude prompts, which we learned that 3 to 5 minutes of gratitude a day can completely change your biophysiology. And you usually, like the way I was in this process, was not very grateful and sadly like focusing on what I didn't have versus what I do have.
That's what I'm saying. It's like such
and there's
mind fuck that you're going through the hardest thing ever as a woman, but you got to be grateful. Like it's really, really hard.
And befriend stress and don't have stress and don't do this. And it's like, again, our most passionate thing I would say in WeNatal is busting these myths. There's so much misinformation. So one of them is that mind and body are connected. You can't treat just one. You can't be healthy if you're always like in a downward spiral and negative and stress, which I very much can relate to because I was as a corporate type A personality who wanted to control everything. And so long story short, the journal is a gift in order to help people try to come back to a little bit of that state of, because we know there's a connection between all of it.
Absolutely.
And we know that from an evolutionary perspective, your body is not going to prioritize reproduction when you're stressed. They're going to be prioritizing chasing, running away from the lion. But the thing is like our daily lives right now is nonstop stress. And so it's figuring out how to navigate that. And, you know, for some people, it could be journaling, like the tool that we created. For others, it could be prioritizing self-care. For others, it could be, you know, going out and having fun and, you know, whatever it may be. But it is really trying to figure out how to add that like joy and fun to life during a time that could be really stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also, you know, the added stress, if you are in a second marriage of, if there's already children and trying to blend the family and dealing with ex-spouses now and people's opinions on top of the already difficult task of conceiving after a certain age. What are some ways, aside from the manifestation and the journaling, which I both very much believe in, what are some ways you help your clients or your customers kind of quiet out the noise and the stress to really focus on what matters here, the end game?
I think part of it for us is creating community. And we've been really working at WeNatal in creating a community and a village because it could be such an isolating time in people's lives. So we have a private Facebook group for all of our members where people ask questions, comment, share, talk about, well, I'm in my 2-week wait right now. I'm so stressed. What should I do? Et cetera, et cetera. The other thing is, of course, like social media, anybody who sends us a DM, if I have time, I'll respond to and send a voice note. Like, we really want to create, like, we feel like we're the big sisters to, all the women behind us. And we want to be able to support them in different ways. And yeah.
It's back to finding little bits of joy in a very stressful situation. Like, I think Ronit mentioned it. You have to kind of find yours, because people who tell you to just ignore the family, or like, these are life pressures that are very normal and common, and they're not going away. So it's like really going, for me, it was inward. I went a little bit more on the spiritual side. I found some things that helped me with my perspective. I found podcasts, but what helps you, whether it's nature, whether it's working out, whether it's eating something you enjoy, but like bringing joys back to our modern day life. I know it sounds like ancestral, but some of that stuff worked. And so it's going back to the roots. Like, there's proven that when you step out in nature, it calms the nervous system. There's proof in a lot of this older wisdom nourishing your body. And so the stress will be there. It's finding your navigation through it all, I think, is what's so important. And those little bits of joy go a long way.
Yeah.
And I think it's also like knowing that you're doing like the right things. I think we share so much about like the power of our nutrients and like what are the things that you should be doing or shouldn't be doing. And we feel like that kind of guide. But if you don't have a guide, it's easy to be lost. Unlike, you're asking ChatGPT, what should I do to get pregnant? Like nowadays it's just doctor tells you one thing, doctor tells you need folic acid, but your naturopath is telling you something else. Who do you trust? And so our goal is to be that like anchor and trusted resource to our community, so they don't have to stress out about like what they're eating or what supplement they're taking. Leave that to us, and they can, worry about the rest.
If you're like me, you could definitely use some extra cash right now. So if you're sitting on old engagement jewelry that's been collecting dust in a drawer that you're like, why do I even still have this? I've got news for you. The experts at Worthy can help you turn that into cash. The cash you could probably use right now on your single parenting journey. It's risk-free, it's fast, literally no more than 2 weeks until you are joining one of the 80,000 people who have already had their jewelry turned into cash. Thousands of people have left verified 5-star reviews. This is a legit process that will make you feel so much lighter and your pockets a lot fuller. Trust me, these guys are the real deal. So all you need to do is visit worthy.com/moms, and I'm going to give you an extra $100 on me if your jewelry sells for over $1,500. That's worthy.com/moms, and I've got you covered. So they're on their path to conceive. They're taking WeNatal, both him and her. What are some other modalities that you feel are really beneficial to the process of conceiving? I know I have a very good friend who I connected you to who specializes in acupuncture for fertility. Like, what are some things that you would say, take WeNatal and also you got to do this?
I love acupuncture. And actually, after my miscarriage, I did acupuncture 3 times a week for 3 months leading up to my pregnancy. So Chinese medicine, huge believer. And, there's now actually research that shows that that acupuncture improves pregnancy outcomes and IVF outcomes. And so even IVF doctors are recommending acupuncture. It helps promote blood flow. It reduces stress. So it has a lot of benefits. I love acupuncture.
Yeah, I'd say nutrition and movement, and those are things that I didn't really know, but the Mediterranean diet has been proven. So eating the rainbow, good quality proteins, good quality fats, and movement. We're all behind a desk way too much. Getting out there, moving, not too much and not too little. Something I learned as we were both hardcore worker outers is you have to really go inwards and make sure it's good for you. If you're super depleted after workout, maybe better to take it a bit easier. You want to do something that energizes you and still, yeah, go ahead.
That is so
See,
on point, because I'm like on this pedestal now of trying to preach to everyone about the impact of high intensity workouts on a woman's body after a certain point. Like, thankfully for functional medicine, my doctor was able to find like my cortisol levels were off the chart. My hormones were all over the place. And this constantly putting yourself in these workouts where your body is going into fight or flight, protecting from the lion when you're really just trying to do more burpees than your body needs to do. It is
exactly.
not good for your body. Maybe it's good for your muscles, but it's going to
Yeah.
screw you up hormonally. And I can't imagine it's helpful when you're trying to conceive, when you need to like take
So,
it easy on yourself.
Yeah, 100%. I used to do these like crazy F45 workouts and I would feel like shit afterwards. And my functional medicine doctor was like, no, like someone like you with your amount of like cortisol, you shouldn't be working out at all. Like just go on walks. Like
Right.
that's all, like you need to be gentle with yourself. So it's not a one size fits all, but there are people that like, working on building muscle and they don't have the cortisol that we have, that, workouts could be good for them, but it just depends what, and you kind of have to like listen to your body and know yourself. And then the other big one is like balancing your blood sugar, because we know that the number one cause of infertility is PCOS, which is rooted in a blood sugar imbalance. And so, like, making sure that you balance your blood sugar, and doing that by prioritizing protein, reducing processed carbohydrates, removing anything that I would call like the SAD diet, the standard American diet. And research is showing now that even people on Ozempic and these GLP-1s are improving fertility outcomes for some people, and some fertility doctors are even using it because it's a way to balance your blood sugar and also like reducing weight. If somebody is overweight or obese, that can also improve their outcomes.
Yeah, I remember seeing an article about like warning to Ozempic users, you might get pregnant when you least
yeah.
expect it. And
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting, but it really speaks to the nutritional piece of what your body needs. And if your body is not breaking down insulin,
Yeah.
why are you not looking at your diet when it comes to getting pregnant? I, I forgot I was going to say something and I lost it. But aside from diet, alcohol. Tell us about that. How much does alcohol play a role?
Alcohol is a toxin. And I would say, like, if I wanted to get pregnant now, I wouldn't drink alcohol, not wine. Like, I just wouldn't touch it. Now, here and there, an occasional drink I think is fine. But research shows, for instance, like in men, let's talk about men. Research shows that alcohol goes straight into the testicle, and it's essentially a toxin that destroys sperm.
Wow.
And so, if you're trying to conceive, why would you drink? And I think, another, you asked about like how to approach men. Another interesting way to talk to men about it is like, it's not forever. If for them, it's essentially like if you take 3 months, because this process of spermatogenesis is 3 months. If you take 3 months to cut alcohol, cut smoking, take a prenatal, increase some movement, eat a little healthier, you can completely transform your sperm, because like in 3 months, your sperm today is from essentially 3 months ago. So it's not forever. And then what we see a lot of times with our customers, our male customers, is they start to feel good, because when you are doing all these things, you're also feeling better. You have better libido. Your hair starts growing. You have focus. You have energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of them continue to stay on it. But it's kind of like, of course, if you tell your partner, like, you have to do these things forever, they're going to be like, no. But if you say, okay, for 3 months, let's just try this, that's a great way to approach it.
And they say men can't change, but their sperm can.
Their sperm is always changing. They're so lucky. And for us women, I just want to also say, like, there is this myth that, like, your eggs age with you. Like, if you're 40, your eggs are 40. And if you're 30, your eggs are 30. But actually, the research shows that the quality of the egg is made in the 3 months before you ovulate. And so what happens is the process of ovulation and egg maturation is a very labor intensive process that uses the mitochondria, which is the battery of the cell. And so when you age, your mitochondria ages and your oxidative stress increases. So the way to improve egg quality is to improve your mitochondria. And so certain nutrients like CoQ10, NAC are shown to improve mitochondrial health. And those, when taking those 3 months before trying to conceive, they can dramatically reduce chromosomal abnormalities in the egg, because that's essentially what causes infertility and miscarriages.
Unreal. Such good information. So tell us about your line of products.
So we have, the foundation of the brand, WeNatal for him and WeNatal for her. That's the prenatal for both men and women. It's 2 separate products, and we were able to create them at 3 pills a day because who could take 12? I
Right.
can, you can, but not her. And especially
I'm in the majority.
I
Most
hate
people.
it. I always say I wish I could just like crush up all my daily pills and put it into like
Put in one thing.
It's a lot. I love that you've simplified the process.
It's a lot. And then we have our Egg Quality Plus product. So that's for anybody kind of either later in life or somebody who's had recurrent miscarriages. Egg Quality Plus is those targeted nutrients to improve mitochondria. And then we have an amazing omega that's not fishy, no fish burps, that are also like tiny. And our newest, latest, and greatest, which we gave you at that event, was our magnesium 4-in-1, because we hear that sleep and stress is a big part of,
Yeah.
a big part of it for so many in our community. So that was our latest and greatest.
Love it. I love it so much. I love that you're doing this. I love that you both took, and some of the most beautiful stories of success are when you take your pain and you turn it into purpose and passion. And you have, obviously, everything will be linked. I know you guys are very active on social media. Share where everyone can find you.
So our website is wenatal.com. On social, we're at we_natal. We also have an amazing free resource. It's a masterclass with 11 episodes at wenatal.com/masterclass. We're all about bringing together our community of doctors and sharing the information that we wish we knew. And so the masterclass is a good place to start.
I love it. Thank you, ladies. And for all of you listening, thank you so much for being here. If you are on a journey to conceive later on in life, like so many people find themselves doing with a second marriage, or even just in a relationship after you've, passed the quote unquote non-geriatric pregnancy years, check it out. Anything is worth trying when it comes to your health and your baby's health and making the process easier on you, because life is hard enough, isn't it? Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time on the Moving On Method.